When a living person moves into a new location, meaning a home or an apartment, could even be a business, the spiritual structure around there gets a little bit ruffled and spiritual activity can get intense. I want to talk to you about that today. If you're new to this channel, I want you to go ahead and click subscribe and the notification button so you can get future videos in these Otherside chats. Also, we do have the Otherside chat community if you want even deeper videos on spirituality, crossing over process, and much more. So this session starts simply by me having my own experience and witnessing it, and then realizing I've seen this before many times. And this would be a really great topic to talk about when it comes to crossing over and interacting with spirits. Now, I recently purchased a home, which is very highly active in itself. But what I'm going to talk about today really can apply anywhere, because different areas of the world have very different vibes when it comes to spirituality. I remember when I, as a medium who did crossing over work, lived in New England in the United States. And I remember when I moved from New England to the Pacific Northwest, I remember this odd feeling of it's a little bit calmer out here. And I realized that's because there was so much tragedy and establishment that had happened in New England that I got to tell you, if you're interested in crossing over work and doing a lot of really helpful work with that, take a visit to New England. It's a very, very active location. But this doesn't mean that other places aren't active. It just means every area is going to be different. Now, when a person moves into a location permanently, meaning they are settling in, a living person is settling into a home, an apartment, an RV park, renting a business structure, it doesn't matter. When a living person permanently takes space in a new location, it's as if it sends out a ripple effect through the spiritual waters. And spirits that were there, spirits that are there, are all going to take note. So don't be surprised if you move in and everything seems kind of calm at first, and then eventually you start to get more and more activity, and you start to realize, wait a minute, did a spirit just I've been here for 2 weeks and a spirit just showed up and is now stuck? That can lead our human minds to think, oh, because I moved in here, something shifted and it's causing spirits to become stuck. This is most likely not the case. That's a possibility, because everything's possible, but that's most likely not the case. When it comes to moving into a new location, sometimes right away you can pick up on whatever's there, but sometimes they're kind of sort of hidden in the spiritual folds. Do you know what I mean? Like hidden in the background, and they're going about their activities and what they're doing. And when you show up, here's the key, and don't leave. At some point, it's going to become more apparent to you. What I'm saying, here's another way to say this. Some spirits that are stuck can kind of hide themselves from the living, in a sense of, I don't want to deal with the living or interact. And while they can do this, spirits do not have as much strength in this agreed upon reality as living people do. Living people have the 3 bodies: physical, emotional, spiritual bodies. And spirits only have 2. The emotional spirits that are stuck only have 2, the emotional and the spiritual body. So living people who are physically here have more control over their environment than a spirit would, even though the movies tell you something different. I get it. But what will happen is, over time, even if that spirit who's stuck, who has put energetic effort into not being seen, is there, the person who has moved in, especially if they're sensitive to spirits and do crossing over work and can feel, see, or hear spirits, you're going to start to see them, feel them, or hear them. Because this concept of I don't want to be seen is simply a concept that works well temporarily for the spirit, but not permanently. So a day after you've been there, 2 days after you've been there, a week after you've been at your new location, don't be surprised if you start to have a little bit more spiritual interaction with a spirit that you didn't recognize or see or locate when you first moved in. This is what I'm walking through right now. Just purchased a home. I'm walking through this myself. I'm showing up there a week later going, oh, look, there's a little bit more activity here. And again, while it can feel like, oh, after I moved in, activity started, I want you to also be aware that that activity might have already been there. Those souls that are stuck might have already been there. They just were avoiding people. You know what? I get that, right? I get that. Like I don't want this interaction. I just want to be where I'm at and just let it be that. Please, thank you very much. That's just how I want this to go. And so, like I said, you'll start to see. You'll start to see more and more. You might even start to see a pattern. You might even start to see a flow that goes through. There are energetic channels that go through properties, through businesses for different reasons. If the previous owner worked in a nonprofit for seniors, for example, that energy is going to be a comforting energy to senior spirits that are stuck in the in-between. So that might attract more of them. So you have to realize you're not only going off of the old energy that was in that location, but you're now bringing in new energy that's going to be different. So I'm moving in, and perhaps if that was the case, I'm actually thinking that that might be because a lot of the spirits that I'm interacting with right now are senior in age, 80 to 90 years old, that are showing up saying, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And I'm like, it's okay. I'm going to still be here every day. You know, who is that guy that's, you know, that's doing that lawn stuff? And I'm like, that's my partner. He's okay. He's a good guy, you know. So when we interact on a day-to-day basis, you know, in there, and we have a different vibration than the previous owner, previous business that was in the business location, previous tenant that was in the apartment, when our energy is very different over time, that's going to almost force the spiritual energy in that area, in the home, in the business, in the land, in the apartment. It's going to force that area to shift in vibration. And when that shift happens, the spirits that were there, that were anchored in, stuck, kind of utilizing that old energy and not seen, not apparent, are going to become more seen and more apparent by you, by the living person that's there who is more aware of spiritual activity. Because the energy around that spirit's going to shift, so that spirit's going to, it's almost like the spirit they lose a little bit of their grip on what they were holding on to remain stuck. So this is all good news. Let's call it the spiritual new home trickle effect. So don't be surprised if you move to a new location, open new location, and then over the course of time, and I'm not even going to limit the time, because if I limit the time, I'm really limiting possibilities there. It could be the next day, could be right away, could be the next day, could be a week later, could be 2 months later. You start to see some spiritual activity and you say, oh, that's interesting, you're here. Let's work at crossing you over and getting you home again to the other side. For me, I've only run into a handful of spirits that are more like, no, what you doing here? And it's very much a reaction. It reminds me that it's a very much a reaction of, if you move in and you stay, your energy starts to build in that area stronger and stronger every single day. Please do GCP in your new home every single day to establish your energy so it feels more and more and more and more like home, and you can sink in comfortably. Well, when you do that, you're gonna raise up some interest from the spiritual world. You may also raise interest from the spiritual world on spirits who have already crossed over. They're not stuck, and they are utilizing their spiritual abilities for a purpose, perhaps to care for land, to watch over, I don't know, your neighbors, or maybe they were watching over the previous owners, things like this. They might just pop in just to check in and check out on you. All of these types of things are possible. I just want to share this with you because if you're spiritually open, if you connect with spirits, especially if you do crossing over work, moving into a new location is kind of like kicking up the dirt, you know? And sometimes you're going to have to wait for the dirt to settle to see that beautiful soul standing there who's stuck go, okay, I guess I should process this now, hey? Because it's important. Why? Because ghosts are people too.